Welcome back to Quilts Blooming with Dawn. It may be really hot outside, but today I am surrounded by nothing but fall and Christmas fabrics. That's right, today we're going to continue our organization tips, but this time we're going to focus on the holidays. Today I thought I'd share a few tips of my approach to managing holiday fabrics. We begin to see all the beautiful fall and harvest collections coming out, followed by all of the Christmas fabrics. It is so hard to not just keep on buying, but there's only so much time and the holidays are only so long. So we really have to bear that in mind when it comes to purchasing and then storing all of our fall and harvest and Christmas fabrics. Most of what I have, I basically accumulated over some time. They're not necessarily recent purchases. There might be a couple in there, but most of these I just add to my stash a little along the way, especially when I get really great deals. Some of the fabrics that are displayed are actually not necessarily just a fall or harvest time. However, for my purposes, what I'm going to use in my home, they do tend to fall under the fall harvest theme or the Christmas theme. So let's take a look. The first consideration is storage. How are you going to store all of those fabrics? And really that's going to determine really how much we should be purchasing, because my rule is when you're out of space, you can't purchase anymore until you use up what you have. Now I don't always listen to my rules, but that's what my goals are. For fall and harvest, I have a basket here full of different fabrics, and some of these are just leftover from last year, some leftovers from some projects I was working on. Some of these are some really good deals that I happen to get throughout the year, and some are just a couple that I just really loved. So let's start with the Jolly Bars. If ever there was a time for Jolly Bars, this is it. Fall and harvest and Christmas, that's the perfect time to pick out some favorite fabric lines in Jolly Bars, and you have just enough to do a single project and nothing more. So I've selected two Jolly Bars for fall. The first one is the Sandalwood collection by Three Sisters. This is from Moda. Again, this is not necessarily just a fall collection. However, with the colors that I have in my home, that's how I would use it, is as a fall collection. And as I mentioned before, every Jolly Bar includes a pattern, and I just love the pattern that was included in this Jolly Bar. It's called Autumn Leaves Quilt. It doesn't make up very big. It's just 46 and a half inches. So really you could just use it as a table topper. Now to go along with the Sandalwood Jolly Bar, I did go ahead and get just a small amount of several of their fabrics because I just fell in love with it. And a lot of times that's what I like to do with a Jolly Bar. Once you get it, you have an opportunity to really look at the whole collection. And again, Jolly Bars are under $25 for the set of fabric plus the pattern. So once I get it, I start looking at each individual fabric from the collection to see what my favorites are. And if it's one that I really love that maybe I'd want to go a little bit further with, I'll go ahead and get maybe 3/4 a yard, maybe a yard. Because this is seasonal, I don't want to get too much. But again, this collection really is one that could be used year-round. You don't necessarily have to use this just for fall, but it certainly lends itself nicely to a fall project. So in addition to the Jolly Bar pattern, I have a couple other patterns using the maple leaves that I really want to use this collection for. So to make maybe something a little bit bigger. So that's why I have a little bit more of my favorite colors. Again, not very much. The maximum I would probably have is a yard, but anywhere from half a yard to a yard of each of these fabrics. And then this one is just a background. I thought that would go nicely for some of the blocks as well. These three fabrics were all finds on the clearance section at a quilt shop not too far from us, just a couple hours away. Some friends of mine and I, we all headed out there one day, and I was so excited to come back with these beautiful fabrics. I got as much of this one as I could because really I can use this year round, but they didn't have much of it left. And then this one I love. It's just the names of trees, all different trees. pecan tree, cherry tree, magnolia, dogwood, elm, just the names of trees. So pretty. I will definitely be using this for the fall. And this is just a little polka dot. These three I was so excited to get, and guess what? It goes with this little bundle of fat quarters that I had gotten at a quilt show here in our town that we had. Someone had sold these little sweet bundles that I'd gotten. Like I said, still has a little tag on it. I paid a whole $21 for this, but I love it, and guess what? It's Corey Yoder's Cozy Up collection. So when I found this, I was just so excited. I got the rest of it to really make a pretty quilt. So I don't know what I'm doing with it yet, but yet I have beautiful fabrics ready to go. So this is definitely, along with my sandalwood, this is a project I'm really excited about doing for fall. The final collection that I have is a Fig Tree and Company collection, and last year I got the Denim and Daisy Jolly Bar. Matter of fact, this is the quilt that I have on display today. I used this Jolly Bar, or one just like it, to make the quilt that's on display back there. I love this pattern that came with it. Matter of fact, I loved it so much I've already made it again in other fabrics. It's so fast, so simple, and it's just a perfect little throw quilt for your couch. Because I love this Denim and Daisy, again, it's got those rich blues that contrast with the oranges and the variations all in between. I just thought it was so pretty. I didn't want it to get away before I got a little bit more of this fabric. So I still have a little bit of this Denim and Daisy that I got by the yard. Again, I got some of this when it was more of a clearance, and I believe I got this one as well. So I had a little bit of this. Then Fig Tree and Company came out with their new collection for 2025, the Agatha Road, that's out in stores now, and it pairs so closely with this Denim and Daisy. I decided to get a few more fabrics from the Agatha Road collection that would pair nicely with what I already have. All right, so you can see the different fabrics that I selected from the Agatha Road. And then of course I have this Jolly Bar too. And so I don't know if I'll make the same thing or maybe something different. I'm gonna likely take some of my blue fabrics, because there's one thing I have lots of, and that's blue fabrics. And so I think I might take some of my Nantucket collection that'll be coming soon, or I have some Shoreline in there, some of my blues, and I'll likely pair that with this as well for one more little fall themed quilt that also goes into my favorite colors, pulling in the blues. So really for my fall projects, I've got three options. I've got the Sandalwood collection by Three Sisters, and again, some fabric by the yard to go along with that. I've got the Denim and Daisy along with some of the Agatha Road collection from Fig Tree. And then I have some of Corey Yoder's Cozy Up. This plus those other three fabrics I showed is enough to make a really beautiful project. So I certainly don't think I need anything else. I have a basket full of beautiful fall fabrics. So now it's just, this is the time you let your creativity flow and get excited about what I'm going to be making with these. When it comes to Christmas fabrics, I really take the same approach as what I do with the fall. I really prefer to get smaller pre-cuts like layer cakes, Jolly Bars, or fat quarters. I always love fat quarters because it's just so much more versatile. And then of course, yardage is always great too. I just don't want to be left with too much. So one of the projects that I got, and this was a little bit of a splurge, this is actually a panel quilt, but it came as a kit. I got a really good deal on it, and so I couldn't resist it. And it's a Lisa Audit quilt from Riley Blake Design, and it's called Santa's Tree Farm. So again, it's a panel, and then you just basically are going to make some Christmas trees to go with it and then border it out. I just thought it was so pretty. I love this one. The other project that I recently did go ahead and get, and I'm excited about, and it's another panel. And it's a Tara Reid from Riley Blake. I just love, it's just the manger scene. And I just thought that would make a beautiful quilt. And so I'm going to do this for the bottom part of it. When I saw this panel made up as an example, I love it. They got some more of this blue fabric to be like sky. And then within the sky, they have stars, like sawtooth stars. Within the stars, though, they fussy cut some of the fabrics from her collection, and it's just more nativity, pictures of the nativity scene. I thought it was so pretty. So I really am excited about doing this one. Again, it won't be very hard to put this together, and it was one that kind of an extra fun thing that I'm looking forward to doing for Christmas. So as far as Jolly Bars, I'm excited about doing another fig tree. I don't know if I'm saying it right, but it's Juan Natal, something like that. I don't speak French, so I can't tell you, but I do love this collection. She just has some really interesting colors, the tones of her fabrics. I don't know, I'm just so drawn to them. So I'm excited. I don't have a lot of this. I did get a little bit of fabric by the yard to pair with it, and I'll likely do a border out of it. So the Jolly Bar, though, again, isn't that beautiful? It's just squares on point. So it doesn't look like it's very hard. The name of the pattern that comes with it is Harlequin, and it makes a 51 by 65 and a quarter, so a decent sized throw quilt. So I'm definitely excited about this, and this will be a very quick project. Now, I had this left over. I think I've had this one for quite a while, and I just haven't gotten around to doing it, but I do keep robbing this Jolly Bar, so I need to stop. But I love this pattern. I think I bought it for the pattern as much as anything else. It's just the little stockings. So hopefully I'll get to that this year. That's the problem, is our holiday seasons are so busy, so we get all these projects and then we run out of time. But hopefully I'll get to that one this year. The last one, that's a fat quarter bundle. This is actually one that I've had for a while now, but it's a Northcott collection. But I love the colors of this. Again, this can go right on into January. It just has the different colors of the pine, the fir trees. So it's just a beautiful quilt. So now for my baskets. Most of what I have in these baskets, it's just some fat quarters. Not a lot of fabric, just some little odds and ends. Again, I'm a sucker for words. So if I find words, I'm gonna probably get it. So again, I didn't get a lot of it, just a little bit. And I'll incorporate that into some projects. Sometimes I just buy a variety. Not really sure how I'm going to use them yet, but it's just some that I've collected. I haven't gotten these recently. It's just some different ones that I've gotten over time. So I really don't need to buy anything else for Christmas this year. I have plenty. So that's my goal, is to just use what I have to make some beautiful projects. So I did get some of the magic dots while it was really good sales over July 4th. And so I'll definitely be using that with some of my Christmas projects. So the other fabric by the yard that I have, it's really just odds and ends that I've gotten that were either given to me or just some leftovers from some projects. Nothing that really is cohesive. I'll likely just pull from it for specific projects. But I felt like with all the fat quarters that I have, the kit, this little panel, and then of course these fat quarters, I have enough to work on these projects to keep me busy for this Christmas. So what I typically do is I have these baskets in my closet. They're not quite as accessible as all the rest of my fabric. I can get to them, but because I know I'm not going to use them for months of the year, I can go ahead and kind of forget about them for a little while. And then when it's about that time, and hey, we're in August now, it's approaching, right? It's about time for us to start tackling certainly some fall projects, and then before we know it, we're definitely going to be doing some Christmas, and depending on the complexity, you may already be working on some of your fall and Christmas projects. But for me, when I'm ready to tackle these projects, I honestly just pull out the basket and I keep it on display somewhere in my house, whether it's in a bedroom or the living room. I just think the fabric is pretty, so I just keep the basket there and I can look at it, get ideas, and pull from it. Before I get ready to do any of these projects, I'll also be going through all of my patterns that I have set aside for the holidays. Matter of fact, I've already pulled a few of them that I'm hoping to do. I won't show them yet. I'll wait till we get closer to time and I'm actually going to be doing a project. But I went on ahead and pulled some of my favorites. They're in the front of my pattern basket. And those are the ones that I'm just mulling over. Haven't decided which will be my top 3 or top 4 patterns, but Those are the ones that I'll likely be making. Another tip, when you're going through your patterns, don't forget your books. Sometimes some of the most beautiful patterns are tucked away in a book. We get all these beautiful quilt books. You think, oh, I want to make this and I want to make that. But then sometimes we don't end up making them. We put them back on the shelf and they sit. So before you start your next project, just go back through those books and see if there's one that's speaking to you for your next project. Next week, I'll be showing a couple different projects that I'm looking forward to making with my Nantucket collection. Matter of fact, 2 of the patterns come from 2 different books that I've recently been looking through. So I'll be sharing that next week, and I'm really excited about some of these upcoming projects. Well, now that we've looked at all this beautiful fall and Christmas fabric, it is time for me to put it all back on the shelf because I'm not ready to tackle it yet. Instead, we're going to get back to our trip around the island. Today, it's not my favorite part. We're basting, but it's a necessary part. So let's get to it. What I've gathered here are some of the things that I use when I'm getting ready to start basting. The first thing I need is my batting. This is the heirloom batting from Hobbs, and it's an 80% cotton, 20% polyester. That's probably the one that I use pretty frequently, but it's not the only one I use, and I'm really not partial to any certain batting. Honestly, it's what's on sale, but I usually do get an 80-20 mix. I have used 100% cotton. I've also used bamboo. I've tried different things. It doesn't really matter to me which one I use. I'm pleased with the results of any of them. So basically, I just get what's on sale. The other thing that I use is the 505 temporary adhesive spray, and I go through lots of this. Matter of fact, I've been working on 2 other quilts I think I showed y'all last week and so I've finished basting those. I went through a whole can on those other 2, so I have a little bit left in here, so I know I'm going to need to open my next can, which is why I tend to buy the 505 adhesive spray as a case, because I do go through it pretty quickly with as many quilts as I make. The other item that I actually like to have is a ruler, and you'll see me actually using this. It's what I use to kind of get the wrinkles out when I'm doing my basting process. I used to just use my hands, and then I saw this used by another quilter, and I thought, wow, that was genius, and I like it so much more. It actually does a better job, and it saves my hands, and I cover more area at once. So that's these are the tools that I use when I'm gonna get ready to baste. The first thing I do is I go ahead and figure out the size I'm gonna need. Since I'm doing all of my quilting right here on my domestic sewing machine, I really allow for about 3 inches on all sides. That's probably a little bit more than I'm gonna need, but it just gives me a little bit of cushion. Once I figure out what I'm gonna use, then I go ahead and cut it down, or if I need to make seams, I go ahead and do that. I tend to just buy some fairly neutral backings when they're on sale, colors that I know that will go with the colors that I typically use. So when I'm finishing a quilt, I just go to that and see what's gonna work. Now, I don't always use like a 108 backing. Sometimes I'll do a pieced backing. So it depends on the quilt, depends on the size. So for this project, I am going to use one of the 108 backgrounds, and the one that I've selected from my stash in there, when I pulled it out, I thought it went well with the laundry basket fabrics. And when I looked closer, it's actually an Andover fabric, so that makes sense why it looks so good with this. So that's what I'm using, and you probably can't see, but it's got like little dots on it. So it's a fairly neutral backing for this, but since there's so much going on the front, I really kind of wanted to tone things down on the back. So I did have enough of the backing, this 108 size backing, left over to actually wrap on a comic book board, so it'll continue to get used as a background in other projects. So once I've cut my batting and my backing the size they need to be, the next step is I want to go ahead and prepare my batting and backing, and I do that by putting my batting in the dryer on steam refresh. Then I take the backing, and while that's doing its thing in the dryer, I go ahead and press my backing completely. I like to get all the wrinkles out. A lot of times it has fold lines. I really want to steam those out if at all possible. I don't wash it, I just press it really good. I go ahead and take my batting and I lay it out on this table. This is the largest table I have, so that's the one I use. I center it as best I can around all sides. Then I take my pressed backing and I lay it on top of the batting. So that's where I am right now in the process. We are ready to actually start basting. All right, so the first thing I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna, again, just try to get wrinkles out a little bit as I can. I'm gonna save the bulk of this, but I just wanna make sure it's smooth underneath and just get it as smooth as possible, get whatever wrinkles out that I can. But I'm basically gonna work one side, and then once this complete side is basted, then I come to the other side of the table and do that side. So I'm gonna go ahead and just lift my backing. I'm going to go ahead and move this to the center. And I do just kind of walk around and get it, I like it pretty neat. All right, so I've got the first half of the backing folded up completely. So I can see this whole surface, and I'm just going to go ahead and spray base this whole area. So I shake my can really good. And then I go ahead and take the center of this and I press my hand on it and just begin to, again, press down right here in the center. And then I begin doing it, working out from the center, all on one side at first. And I notice I'm just kind of holding this up as I go. We're gonna go back over it all, but I'm just kind of making sure it doesn't have any major wrinkles in either the batting or the backing. All right, now I'm going to do the same thing now on this side. So once I've got it smoothed out just a little bit with my hand so it is pressed down, this is where the ruler comes in handy, and I start back in the center and I kind of hold it here and I just begin to press the wrinkles out. You can see how much it's getting. And then of course I just kind of let it slide on down. Go back and do it again on this side. Do the same thing going this direction. Okay, once I've got that pressed pretty good with the ruler, then I'm going to go ahead and pull it down because it's hanging off right now. So I just kind of pull this back, the area that hasn't been sprayed. All right, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pull it down to expose the other end. right, at this point, I'm going to pull it back to center. And now I'm going to go ahead and pull the whole thing over that way so I can get the rest of this side of the backing. And I'm going to repeat the process where I go ahead and pull this back to expose the batting. All right, I'm going to go ahead and spray this as well. I'll go ahead again, repeat the same process where I pull it in the center. And the same thing to the other side. Go ahead and pull up my ruler and do the same thing. All right, I'm going to go ahead and pull both sides like I did before. Make sure I get the ends. I'm going to do the same thing on this end. At this point, you're done with half of it. So if you want to go back through, if you see any areas that are wrinkled and you need to go ahead and get out anymore, this is the time to do it. Once you have that whole side done, it's time to go ahead and pull it back. And at this point, it should be pretty clear where the area that's been basted and the area that is not. So I can see right here where the wrinkles start. So that's where we're gonna pick back up. I'm gonna get the camera moved and we'll start basting the other side. All right, we are done with basting the backing. At this point, I flip the entire thing over and center it to prepare it for basting the top. Once you have the batting with the backing already adhered, once you have that flipped over, we're ready to go ahead and center the top right in the center of this as well. Just make sure you have enough overhang on all areas so you don't risk having not enough batting and backing. Once you have it pretty centered, and you just want to go ahead and again get it pressed down as good as you can, get the wrinkles out. All right, now that I've got this completely centered where I need it to be, I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same process where I pull it up and work on this half of the quilt. All right, we're down to the last half of the top. So I'm going to go ahead, repeat this same process. Now that we're done basting, the next step is I'm just trimming the excess batting and backing. I leave about 1.5 to 2 inches, no more. It reduces the bulk that you'll have at the sewing machine. Now that we just finished basting the trip around the island, I wanted to show you one more quilt that I'm just finished basting as well. And I wanted to show you this one because this one is an even larger quilt than the other one. This one is actually 101 or 102 inches squared. So it's a pretty big quilt. When you're thinking about the size of a quilt, it can be intimidating thinking of trying to baste and quilt a larger quilt. But I just wanted to show you with this one how even though this quilt is very large, we can still really baste quite easily on a table this size, and really you could do even a smaller table. What it basically means is there's going to be more movement as you're doing the basting. So just like we did with Trip Around the Island, I had it centered, and then when I had done the whole centered area, then I would pull it to the right or pull it to the left. And that's basically how I did each section. So it really was no problem at all. This would be the identical thing where we would just shift it. Once we're done with that whole section, you shift it over till you can see the edge. Once you finish that, you shift the whole thing back. So it's definitely easier. Now, larger table does help, and I will say smaller quilts are easier. But don't be intimidated from trying a larger quilt, because it can be done, and I've done many this way without any problems at all. We got my least favorite part of the process over with today. We finished up our basting, and like I said, I've been working on 3 quilts at once. So Trip Around the Island, then of course the bird quilt with the 9 patches. I got that one basted, and then this was the other one that I've been working on. So they're all basted, and next week we'll be doing what I consider the fun part, which is the quilting. And after giving it a lot of thought, I think Trip Around the Island, I'm gonna end up going with an echoed diagonal line about a 1/2 inch apart using my walking foot. I feel like for me that's gonna be the best option. However, I'm also going to be working on quilting the bird and the 9 patch one, and on that one I think I'm going to go with lots and lots of swirls. So that one will be some free motion. So next week you'll see definitely the process of using my walking foot, but then I'll also show a few minutes of the swirls, the free motion swirls. So hope you join us next week for that, but until next time, happy quilting!